Alrighty, I gave it about a minute to let everybody start getting on, and I'm sure the audience will keep coming on as we get going, and that'll work. That's fine. I think the most important part is that we just wanted to get all of this on the record so that it's available for the weekend, so you can like and share, send it to people so that you know what's going on. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on all of my friends with me, and I'm going to start with our friend Mary from the UNSUT. Good afternoon, Mary.
Good afternoon. I really enjoyed your morning session with Jason Murphy. I learned a lot about what happened yesterday on the House floor that I did not realize. He's a great source for how things are actually supposed to work in the legislature.
He really is, and that was all no bueno. Okay, so we'll bring on Janice Danforth, Mom for
Howdy.
Liberty. I just made a song for you.
We are going to start singing that.
Janice Danforth, Mom for Liberty.
Liberty.
Okay, so we're going to have Dana Mooney, who's our other Mom for Liberty, on here in just a second, but I think she's having a little bit of a computer glitch. So, ladies, oh, and there's Dana Mooney right now, so I will bring her in. There she is, our other Mom for Liberty, Dana Mooney. Okay, so you guys have been so, I think all of us as a team have been so amazing about trying to raise awareness about this creepy bill SB 224. And we've been trying to figure out what's going on with it and why are we even doing this. And I'm going to show this video that we've all seen, and it's made us all very ill. But I'm going to show it for everybody so you guys can all be ill too. All right, so hang on just a second. I might be able to bring it in a video file. Let me see, 1 second. I should have pulled that up earlier, shouldn't I have? New ones. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, yeah, I can actually bring that. All right. Everybody will get to hear it better if we do it this way. Yay. All right, here we go.
So I agree with you about this idea that education is about preparation for the workforce.
Stop. Is education about preparing children for the workforce?
No.
Not at all.
Not healthy children.
No.
Better answer. Okay. All right. So you ready?
How do we need to evolve policy, particularly federal policy, in order to make our education system meet the needs of the economy that we have today?
Okay. So what did she say? Meet the needs of the economy that we have today. So we're educating kids for the economy. Is that right?
That's what she said.
Is that the job of
correct.
education? Okay. Well, let's hear what he says. Maybe let's hear what he says.
Yeah. The only way we have a workforce is that we have jobs, that we have businesses, and businesses need to know that they have a stream of adequately prepared, and I say adequate with full intention, adequately prepared at least. So when they do their own tinkering with developing that new employee, they have a chance to do it.
Holy smokes. So anybody want to say anything about the video before we move on?
Well, I would say this is what scares me the most about public-private partnerships. When the government and industry join hands, suddenly the people and their children should be molded to serve the system rather than the system, which is the government serving the people.
And that says, this made me sick when I heard him say that. Yes, Sherry was the one, she couldn't be on today, but she was responsible for sending all of us that horrible video. But I think the worst part.
With you about this idea that education is about preparation for the workforce. How do we need to evolve policy, particularly federal policy, in order to make our education system meet the needs of the economy that we have today.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what we're here to talk about today, evolving Oklahoma's education policy to meet the needs of the workforce. Would you agree, ladies?
Yes.
And I
Out of
think it's
curiosity, what's the date on that video?
It was last November.
well, and they're not only changing federal policy, they're changing state policy, which is what we are witnessing in session this year. So
Oh, and by the way, if you would like a link to that whole thing, it's called What's Next for Federal Education Policy, a conversation with Tim Wahlberg from the American
Federation of what is it?
AEI, and I've forgotten what they
American Enterprise Institute.
Thank
or
you.
something?
That's it, American Enterprise Institute. So
There's too many.
I know. If you go to the YouTube clip that we just showed, it will have the link in it and it explains it. So there you go. And I do think there's some of that now. Yes. So, ladies, there was a bill, SB 224, and found it early on because it literally said in the title that it was about connecting data, right? Educational data and workforce data.
Right.
Correct.
So we have all been racking our brains to figure out why, right?
Right.
And where this came from. So I think we figured it out. So I'm going to share. I think we all finally managed to figure it out. And this is really something important that everybody really honestly does need to see. So let me get this up here. I'm scrolling through to make sure that I've got the right thing. Okay, so here's what we need to share first. All right, this is Policies in Action, Solving Education to Workforce Challenges with the Right Combination of Policies. And so when you go down here, this is Excel in Ed. And who runs Excel in Ed? Anybody know?
Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush.
No, Jeb Bush.
You knew that.
Wait,
Really?
he was just here.
He
I feel
was.
like we're in school. Like the teacher knows the answer, but I'm so surprised when the students get it right.
So, as Mary said, he was just here at the
Yes.
2024 National Summit on Education in Oklahoma City. And when you consider the fact that this was in Oklahoma City and now we have this bill, and then Dana, you have you have several numbers of bills that they've passed for workforce this year, right?
Yes, those were between several different legislators, but primarily, it's like a group of them that are working on them. It's not, spread out or nothing. They're real open about it.
Well, Brian Hill, remember we
Yeah.
talked about him. He's tired.
So tired.
So tired.
Yes, it's been
Madam
primarily
Speaker.
Brian Hill and Adam Pugh are two of seem to be
Yeah.
the top ones that I'm seeing.
And so Brian Hill is, we've mentioned this before, he is the designated House of Representatives member to the Governor's Council on Workforce and Economic Development.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would add, if we're going to talk about the who as to how this national push that you're showing us is getting to Oklahoma, I would add Chad Caldwell, the legislator. If you go and you look, he is actually the primary author on Senate Bill 224, one of them, one of the two.
Yep. Mhm.
And if you go and look at his bio, even out on okhouse.gov, where we go to find information, state information, his bio says that he currently serves on the Southern Regional Board of Education Board. I did a big piece on them. They're one of the most progressive national education organizations. And what they do is they pull together people from all the southern states, I think 14 southern states, and they bring them in and they tell them what the policy should be. And then they send them back to their states to ignore their constituents. He also says on here, he's an emerging leader by the State Legislative Leadership Foundation, another national, a Henry Tolles Leadership Fellow by the Council of State Governments, that's also outside of Oklahoma, a national NGO, an Early Learning Fellow by the National Conference of State Legislatures, and was selected for the Center of the Advancement of Leadership Skills for the Southern Legislative Conference on the Council of State Governments. So he doesn't have time to listen to Oklahoma constituents. He's out of the state powwowing about what national policy should fall upon them.
All of that translates to, I don't work for the people that elected me. I work for special interests. That's all that says.
And I think that, and I want you to see what is up on the screen right now.
Silence your phones.
Cell phones.
Okay, so this was at the conference, right, last November, and
Right.
voila, it is now state law that the governor has signed. Guys, so important.
Yes. And I would say silence your kids' phones where they're at school. But then we had 2 Republican legislators pushing a bill to undo the bill last year that prevented coaches and teachers from
Right.
communicating by phone and text one-on-one with students for safety reasons. So they were trying to get back their communication by cell phone with students, and then they're shutting down. A student can no longer text their parent from school. Not that I disagree with it, but there's just a hypocrisy there.
But they're okay with those Chromebooks staying in schools, though.
Correct.
And they work around those. The kids
Yeah.
know how to work around those.
Yeah, but that's a huge issue. I mean,
Mhm.
you realize that that's just so hypocritical. I mean, it's
Right.
just stupid. So here we have Jeb Bush pushing this silence your cell phone thing, but we are going to leave computers that we know for absolute actual kids are getting porn on, among other
Right.
things, in their classrooms.
Right.
So Julia pointed out something I think is very important. Bush was also here to campaign for Ryan Walters and Stitt, and Nellie Sanders, who is our Secretary of Education appointed by Governor Stitt, and her husband, Mike Sanders, who is now I don't know if he's the highest paid person sitting on a board, but he's a former legislator that now sits at the head of the Broadband Initiative Board in Oklahoma.
Interesting.
They both interned for George W. Bush and was state campaign manager for Jeb. So I think it's super important that we realize that this state is small and the revolving door is big.
Right.
A big revolving door. So let me throw this tab up so you guys can see this too. So when you go and look at this particular website, it talks about all of the policies that they feel like each state should implement. Okay. And so there are several of them: 5 return on investment analysis, high quality CTE programs. I guess that's training, industry valued credentials. And this is, I guess, Florida. I don't know why that, and I don't know where that came from. And when you get down to the bottom, it says data-driven decision-making, program quality measures, state longitudinal data system. So that's one. That's one of the things that you have to have. So they actually have case studies up on this website. And so I clicked on Oklahoma's case study. And so they're telling you what Oklahoma has done to be able to align with the policies in this pathway. So really, when you get down and you can see a little, I'm trying not to scroll too fast, but I don't want to take forever. And I'm sorry, I'm going back up because I don't know. It did something. And oh, there it is. Okay. There's the actual one. So this is Oklahoma's state policy case study. Governor Stitt and his Workforce and Economic Development Council have put a stake in the ground around making Oklahoma a top 10 state for workforce development. Innovative policies and programs are supporting this goal, such as the Oklahoma Promise, supporting post-secondary tuition for learners from low-income backgrounds, and removing legal barriers for employers to participate in work-based learning. Many outstanding questions, however, remain, with the need to strengthen data collection and analysis in making programmatic decisions and ensuring alignment to high skill, high wage, high demand programs in credentials. So if you go through here, it basically tells you all of the ways that Oklahoma is aligning with Jeb Bush's Florida-based, nationally recognized, all 50 states, I guess, privately created Pathways program.
Correct. How embarrassing for our legislators when they go to their national conferences and they haven't checked off all the boxes in Jeb Bush's plans.
It is sad, don't you think?
It is.
So let me ask you a question. So in this bill, in Senate Bill 224, they changed the acronym from the SLDS to the EDS. So for people who aren't familiar with, that nothing else was changed in the bill. So I think it was just one of those things that, because I think somebody came out with it and said, look, we made it better. It's good now. There's no issues. You changed an acronym.
Well,
it was the exact bill.
Was that to pick up the breadcrumb that you're following right now that leads right back to this plan and this organization?
I don't know. We're not very smart,
Yeah.
We're not.
We don't know
not.
anything. Yeah.
We're dumb.
Yeah.
So when you go back to this and you look, there's a whole section on the Governor's Council on Workforce and Economic Development has set 4 impact goals with data-based outcomes and targets. The 4 goals are, and we need to go back and look at the rest of the bills that passed because we need to see if they align. Increase Oklahoma's labor force participation rate from 60 to 65, create 50,000 new private sector jobs with an average salary of $55,000 a year. Achieve top 10 status in U.S. unemployment rate, increase effectiveness in serving employers. There's just nothing in here. And then notice here is the GCWED strategic plan. I showed that to you the other day and it's not actually hooked up, but I already showed it to you the other day to show you that we already have this in full swing here in Oklahoma. But they show you, you can go out and get this. I'll put the links. I did already put the links in the article that I put out last night. So all these links are in there. You can go find these for yourself. We're not making this up.
We wish
not
we
making
were.
this up.
We wish we were. I think it's important too to explain, because I had a conversation with a legislator regarding the workforce concern with the Senate Bill 663 and 664 that Pugh and Hill are part of that passed.
Yeah.
And told him we're a no on this. And he was like, well, wait a minute, we want we want to match, we want kids to see what's there. I said, absolutely, we want kids to know there's a need in X, Y, or Z area. I said, the problem with this, and I think people need to understand, because they think like this legislator did, when you don't have ill intentions, you don't see it as a bad thing. So it's important to understand what they're saying and what it actually means, which is to create essentially robots. They are taking away the individuality of the child. They're taking away their passion, their interests to fulfill something for themselves within their state and within the nation, to create money for them on the other side. So this isn't about the student getting a job that's good. It's about them making more money off of the student learning what they want them to learn so that they can then go in and do that job. And that's where we're at. And then we turn into China, which is what I told this legislator. What's the difference? That's what they do. They literally tell them, this is the job you're doing. I mean,
Well, and Dana, you had the data quality grants. I don't have them right here. I thought you had them. Do you have them that we could go through and look? I might be able to pull them. I'm not sure. But the part that we need to really make, this isn't about kids. This isn't about education. This isn't about students. That's not in here at all.
Right.
What this is about is a planned economy, because you heard the guy, Tim Wahlberg, basically say, oh my gosh, this is so funny. Steph just said the Bee movie. Sherry sent us.
Talked about that.
It
We were
is
talking about that.
It is, Jenny. When I was looking through what you did on this that you had out yesterday, the two words that I couldn't find that always scare me the most, and I think if legislators are looking at anything about education, if they don't see these two words, they should send them back.
Academic.
And yes. Well, it's parents and family.
Okay.
They don't exist in this whole scheme of theirs. They've taken that out, and now the government's going to fill the place of what that child will grow up to be.
Right. Yeah, that's a perfect way to say it, is the government's deciding, guiding them and putting them where they want, rather than it being a decision with the family, which is absolutely where it should be and where they should be encouraging it if they're actually conservatives.
When Janice and I sat down with the authors, that was one thing we asked them about, was a parent opt-out option in this, and they wouldn't even hear that option. Like they just glazed right over and went to something else. So
Wasn't.
Well, and I think it's been this long, slow march through the institutions of, that has been the real problem. We've had Marxists get into these positions and then try to, they've done what they wanted us to do. I mean, we're becoming more and more socialist. We're becoming more and more globalist. We're becoming more and more planned and centralized. And I know people say, because I've had literal arguments with people over Real ID lately, and they're like, but the government says I have to have it by May 7th. Number one, did you guys realize that the government came out and said, no, never mind.
Exactly.
It's okay. You'll be able to get through the airport, because they know nobody is doing it. There are too few people doing it to be able to actually make it fly. And it's because those of us who are saying, suck it, I'm not doing it, that they're not doing it. But the problem is you have so many people who say, well, but the government's trying to protect us from bad people. And, I just want to be able to get on a plane and feel like I'm safe, right? And you have people who say, but my kid wants a job. I want my kid to be able to get out of college and have a job. I want my kid to be able to be employed, even if they don't want to go to college right out of high school. And I know we all feel that and we understand that, but that's not what's happening.
No, because that's it's about options and intentions. What are their intentions behind this? Right. And are they still leaving citizens with every option and every liberty to choose as they would for themselves and for their children? And then the data is a huge point in this. We keep thinking that it's only about workforce, but once it's consolidated, and when you look at the bill 224, it gives these sort of soft assurances that we won't collect this specific data, but then you go further and it says we can add any agencies that we want, which means all of the data collected in that new agency that they haven't even identified and don't even have to go back to the people or the legislator to add.
Their council gets to decide that they chose the council of.
Yes. And it specifically says they can expand the council as they see fit. They can add new organizations and new seats to that. They can add committees, which adds a whole other thing to it. And we're not going to release your data. Well, then the person who runs the OEQA, who will house this data, stood up at a committee meeting and said, let me give you an example. OU wants to research something. We can approve them. And now it's going out all over to higher ed. I don't know how I can understand why people are not excited about their data being put into this pool.
Right.
Going to add your, because you did an amazing job.
Yes, this was great.
Of covering. So this is V1SUT Substack. OEQA will hold Oklahomans lifelong data. And cover your eyes for a second, because I'm going to flip down to the and it almost makes me sick when people do that online. So cover your eyes. Okay. So do you want to talk about this, Mary?
Yeah, we can. We can talk about, so there are always people in the background. They're not elected. This data is going to an agency. It's going to expand an agency where there is no elected head. Nobody was chosen by the people whatsoever. Okay. So you've got 100% bureaucratic agency.
Okay, let me stop you right there. And none of these have any how do you stop them? The only elected officials are Brian Hill, and that's just on that one workforce committee. So keep in mind, as Mary talks about this, how do you get to people that are bureaucrats, that are appointed? How do you fix any of that? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. And it's really about, where did the push for this come from? And you look at it, yes, it came from the outside. All these sources you're talking about, our legislators go off. I don't know if it's a soft sell, if it's an ideological romance they're having at these education NGOs, or if there's this massive pressure that Oklahoma's behind the curve on this plan. I'm not sure, but somebody inside the government actually was pushing this. And we look at, this is Megan Oftedal. She used to be Megan Clifford. And she actually is the executive director of the Oklahoma Education Quality, so the OEQA. That's an organization that was formed in 2014 off of 2012 legislation that's a lot like Senate Bill 224. It's going to solve education quality. Well, the truth is, student test scores plummeted from 15 to 19. We didn't even get to the COVID yet because we don't want to complicate. They plummeted. This agency opened and we took a nosedive. I'm not saying the agency was responsible for that, but I can't say that this agency was a success. So this young woman, she worked for the RAND Corporation. And if you know anything about the RAND Corporation, they are a global policy influencer. They are a juggernaut. They also have their own graduate school for PhDs sort of in this area where data affects policy. So she worked for them. That's where she got her PhD. And then she was a Harvard fellow from 2013 to 2015. And people don't realize this because her name, in that time she got married, there was a name change. She was embedded at the State Department of Education. So if you think about sort of that time frame, it was as we're gonna take a trip back. It was sort of as Joy Hoffmeister was building the coalition to start to run for state superintendent. So Megan then Clifford was there, a Harvard fellow working data in the background of the OSDE. And then everything blew up. Joy Hoffmeister was caught. The affidavit of probable cause in her indictments, along with the leaders of 2 of our education unions and 2 political consultants. They formed a dark money group that the candidate by law cannot have anything to do with. And it was funded. The first funding, $100,000 that went into it, was from American Fidelity Assurance. And that's a big old insurance juggernaut that pushes the policies on teachers and schools. So they are tied in with public education in a big, big money way. Well, as Joy Hoffmeister was in her trouble, this person, who's now Megan Oftedal, jumped over and worked for American Fidelity Assurance. So we see that she's been here in the background the whole time. At the same time, what's not on her resume is that she kept working for the OSDE in the background, doing data on a temporary basis. We see where she's paid there. She was also working for OMES on the state level. That's not on her resume. So there's just all these tentacles happening. And now this person is paid by the government to be the executive director of one of our state agencies, and she's also the listed lobbyist that went out and pushed this bill. So now you have a state agency that is lobbying to expand itself and give itself more funding, more power in all of Oklahoma's data.
And can I add, we will point out who hired her for OEQA.
Interesting.
Catherine Curry, who was the Secretary of Education. After Ryan became elected as state superintendent, he was temporarily both, appointed her into that role. She's the one who hired Megan. And we found a document from a year ago, an article where she spells out in this article, Curry does, this whole thing. It's all there.
And who was the director of OEQA before Megan was hired? Nellie Sanders.
Nellie Sanders, yep. Who's now Secretary of Ed.
Exactly.
The revolving door is insane.
It is. They pass torches and they just expand the campfire.
Well, you know, one person has asked on here, and we've talked about this too. Oh, and I think this is an important thing to stick in there. They're preventing children from becoming all God created them to be.
That's true.
Correct.
But I mean, the man, that Wahlberg guy, literally says businesses expect a pipeline of workers. That's what your child has been reduced to these globalists, to the Jeb Bushes, to the Kevin Stitts, that's who they are. They're little cogs in a machine, little waiting in the pipeline to be spewed out into another business. What a horrible way to be. Okay, so we had talked about, somebody said on here, well, why is this? There must be a bunch of money involved. And so, Dana, did you find you didn't find it? It's in my email somewhere. Hold on, let me see if I can pull up my email and see if it's in there. But the bottom line is that they're not doing this for free. That what ends up happening is that Jeb Bush's nonprofit, benevolent organization will help them create policy that will allow them to capture more and more federal dollars. And I don't know about you guys, but you deal with a lot of parents. When you talk to parents about federal anything, do they make a face and act like they're gagging, or is it just me?
Yes.
No, their parents are more and more awake all the time. So I just had a parent ask me, we were talking about, this isn't federal related, but about state testing. And I'm like, yeah, you can opt your kid out. And I said, and the school was telling her she couldn't. I said, they don't get to tell you what you do with your kid. You get to tell them. And she said, I didn't know that until, basically Moms for Liberty came along. And now I teach parents the same thing you've taught me. So that's just it, is once one parent learns, that's what's great about this movement. Once one parent understands what we're saying about something, then they want to tell, because it's our kids. Like, there's no bigger passion than a mom for her child. So when you can help another mom with their child, then you want to tell them and get them the education on whatever the topic may be. So I think that's why we've seen such a huge influx of parents involved since COVID.
Agreed.
Oh my goodness. So this is something Sherry sent me. And I'm going to pull this onto the screen because I'm not sure if she sent it to you guys or just me. I'm not really sure. But this is bizarre because it actually really does bring everything full circle. Is this one? So these are the sponsors of the Excellent in Ed, however he says it. Excellent Ed, November. What do we want to call that? It wasn't an education fest. It was a Make Children Widgets fest. So she sent this, and this is our friend Jebby right there. Mm-hmm. And then she talks about purpose, and the Walton Family Foundation Excel in Ed is funded by a mix of individual donations, foundation grants, and corporate contributions. While they don't disclose the specifics of their donors, notable funders include the Walton Family Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the Bloomberg Foundation.
Which we see all of them, and all of these vendors, organizations are all funded by them.
Yes.
And Adam Pugh was a panelist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know who
And then-
primarily funds the U.S. Chamber? He's listed in there. This stuff isn't coincidence. I mean, that name is everywhere. Jeb Bush is usually shortly thereafter. So this isn't surprising to us. I mean, that have been looking at this, but we always say follow the money for a reason. And
Well,
you
and here's
almost always
another
find
thing.
their names. Yeah.
Here's another thing. A couple of roundtable sponsors of the November conference. Anybody remember Class Wallet?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a huge debacle in Oklahoma surrounding Class Wallet
And COVID funds.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
and COVID funds? 40th Lexia, Science of Reading. And who said Science of Reading was bad? Was that you, Mary?
Well, there's lots of different tech vendors around this, and there's not a lot of evidence that technology is increasing literacy. There's actually more evidence in the other direction. So we were probably talking about that.
But you see
So-
what's highlighted in that right at the, if you scroll back up a little bit, right at the top,
Equity.
prioritizing equity.
Absolutely. If you've ever been to an education conference, which I have, like out of state, a lot of federal grants are tied in with these folks. So like the Walt family is huge in out of school time learning, which is programs that have kids in before school. They have them in after. They do summer programming. The Waltons really own that space. And when you bring these public school teachers in who are being paid to, you know, stay extra and do those kind of programs or come back in the summer, these are elaborate conferences. They are pool parties and bands and all of these great things that really suck in educators. And I think the same thing is happening with our legislators, with a lot of these other kinds of organizations where they're going to these conferences. They have so much fun. They're wined and dined. These are now their friends, and these are now their alliances.
Exactly.
Well, and I think too, with the bill we're fighting 224, they already have chosen the vendor for this data system. They won't
Is it
reveal.
public?
I'm wondering. That's what I was just thinking. Yep.
I bet it's public, because one of the other things that is, and I believe it's in the Bush plan, is this ICAP, the individual college assessment program or whatever, so that every kid basically is on an
Yes.
IEP. So if you look up Public Consulting Group, which all of us have here, you'll see Jenks is on board with them. There are Owasso, I think there are a whole bunch of schools in Oklahoma using this Public Consulting Group. So now I would imagine that they have a lobbyist here.
Right.
And certainly, like Mary just said, they put on these elaborate pool parties and, these conferences. Another one is Yonder phone-free spaces. How phone-free policies improve focus, safety, and academic success. Graham Dugoni, Yonder founder and CEO, who is a speaker.
Yep.
What's Power School?
Yeah, they just got breached, which we use that as our example when we met with the authors of the bill.
Yep.
Power School, another one of those ones. I think every single state school has to use Power School, because that's the one. I think if I'm right and I remember correctly, Power School is the one that matches the SIF framework. So it goes, all of the schools report on that same track, and the train goes right to wherever they want it to go. So
thinking about the vendor, I mean, what Janice just said kind of flew by, that they already have a vendor. That goes against law. It goes against contracting policy. Cindy Bird has done, when she did her OMES audit, that was one of the things that happened. All these COVID funds were coming in, and they weren't following the contracting policy. So if this has been pre-identified and there's communications between these folks, there's going to be some freedom of information requests flowing on that.
Yeah.
When this vendor is finally revealed.
They think if this bill passes, they're across the finish line. We will be watching and making their life hell with this bill.
And the other thing is the OEQA director, executive director that we talked about, actually was asked questions when she came to that committee meeting, and they were discussing the bill. And she said that first of all, there's some confusion about whether there will be a fiscal impact in FY26 for this. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because they put the emergency tag on it. But if there's no fiscal impact for FY26, how do you get the emergency? This has to go into effect right now. I'm not sure about that. But she said that in FY26, that she said there would be a position created to oversee the EDS, which is their new term for state database system, and that the cost would be $85,000 the first year and would be $350,000 in FY27, which says to me we're getting someone for a partial year for this enormous salary. So let's talk about who's going to land in that chair. That's going to be another really revealing thing. Do we have a legislator who's getting ready to term out that will end up in that chair? Do we have one that just termed out that are all involved in education? There's several choices there to be watching as front runners for who's going to land in that chair.
Well, I have to say, as I'm scrolling through all of these people that, helped to, and vendors that helped to put on that conference in November, I understand that basically the liberals have taken over education and made it their own thing. But you're talking about the Bezos family, along with the Walton Foundation, and then all these other things, College Board, Amplify, Stand Together, Pearson. None of these are good things. And they've all interacted over the years to create real havoc here. And then it looks like somebody, whoever this was, put together a whole list of things, bills.
Oh, and there's that 6.
Oh, that was
so
me.
I was just informed that during this conference, Jeb Bush actually started going after Ryan Walters and threw him under the bus at this conference.
Jeb Bush did?
Uh-huh.
No.
Yeah. Someone just alerted me to that who was at this.
Wow. Did Ryan Walters say parents? Is that what got him in trouble?
Yeah. So now it makes sense. I mean, that even makes sense why Stitt started going after Ryan. I mean, this is a big, deep rabbit hole that we are in. And, it's interesting. Every day we keep finding more and more information, and people keep sharing with us more and more information as they feel like we're exposing some truth. And that's what we do, right?
Well, and I wanted to point out something too. So this goes back all the way. Julie will remember this post. It goes all the way back to 2014 when we were fighting Common Core. Several crazy things happened in 2014. I think I said 2024. I meant 2014. So we had a whole group of, Republican leaders that we elected in because we wanted to get out of this liberal, cycle of, failure in education. And we wanted to try to do something different. Well, so we elected Janet Barisi as the state superintendent and Mary Fallin as our governor. Mary Fallin and Janet Barisi did every single thing that Obama asked them to do, because the National Governors Association and the state Secretary of Education, Chiefs for Change. Janet Barisi was one of what Jeb Bush called his chiefs for change, which were the chiefs that were going to come in and implement all of this policy. But it wasn't anything other than the Obama policy, which Jeb Bush was pushing along with everybody else. And so here's the interesting thing. back in the day, Excel and Ed was called FEE, and I can't even remember what the FEE stood for, but you can see it right there. I'm going to see if I can make it larger so you can actually read that. Give me 1 second so I can read it. I don't even care about you. I can't read it. Okay.
I just heard your rooster in the background.
Oh,
At least
I have two, and they run around in the yard and drive me crazy all day. So it was the Foundation for Excellence in Education. Oh my gosh, our friend John Crumey is on. He says, smells familiar. He was with us in that fight too. So the Foundation for Excellence in Education was what the XL in Ed used to be. And so they had this national summit, and all of these Republican leaders, here's Janet Bracey with Jeb Bush, one of his chiefs for change. There's a whole group of people who are involved in this was the chairman of the Senate Education Committee, John Ford, who wouldn't hear any of our bills to stop Common Core. And this was Ann Cootie, who was the chair of the Common Education in the House at the time, and she wouldn't hear any of our bills. And this lady, I can't remember her name, was on the school board at the time, and this lady was the attorney for the State Department of Education. And so they all got to go to this and Stand for Children, I forgot, Stand for Children went with that, and they're a very liberal organization. And Clark Jolly, who was the chair of the Senate Appropriation Committee at the time, got to go. And all of these people went to this Jeb Bush conference, and they got paid to do it. And they were given free scholarships to do it. And that's kind of what you would consider, like a pay for play thing. And then Jeb was so involved in Common Core. So this is 2013. He wrote a letter an email to all of the people in the House and Senate. So it went to all of them. And this was his email debunking Common Core state standards. And that was the thing Julie and I and Lynn heard all the time. Well, this is just misinformation.
Sounds familiar. That's what they're
You're
saying
just
about
touting
us.
misinformation.
Yeah.
Well, the fact was they were never able to debunk anything we said because we got everything off of the websites that they had out there. And I would just screenshot it. They couldn't say it, but they were trying to influence legislators by telling them that we were giving out misinformation.
This
and
sounds
so
so familiar. This sounds so familiar.
So he just sent this email to everybody, saying, hey, you better get on board with this, and you need to adopt the Common Core state standards because that's what we need to do with this. And that's exactly what's going on now. We're having the exact same problem where we have Jeb Bush coming into Oklahoma. His father was the one who started the SLDS. His father was, if nobody remembers, the architect with the UN of the 2020. Oh, Julie says Amy Ford 2020. What is it? Agenda 21. Agenda 21. That's right. Bush Sr. with the UN helped create Agenda 21. So that's who these people, Bush, what did he do? Well, we had planes fly into towers, so he created something called the Patriot Act to spy on every single American, and we are being spied on still now. No Republicans have done anything to stop that, even though the Constitution says that the government will not spy on us in like 4 different articles. So this is who these people are, and yet we're told that this is all conservatism. It's not conservatism. It's globalism. It's globalism.
And it's all about data. Everything you just talked about. Data.
They need the data to do what they need.
Yep. Yeah. It is.
It says they better fix their websites because that's where we're getting all our information.
Well, and like, I don't want to forget in this, things are happening so fast with this push and with Senate Bill 224 that I'm starting to forget the sins of the legislature from 3 days ago because things are happening so fast. But, if we go back to just May 1st, on May 1st, our Speaker Hilbert set down the rules again, and they just had another vote on 224 after it had failed multiple times, which is a breach of the rules. And then you fast forward to what we experienced yesterday, where the state superintendent gave a very benign quote and stayed neutral on that. And that was enough.
That was enough.
Published at 10:30, and then according to Jason Murphy this morning, within 10 or 15 minutes, someone very subversively went up and said, "Hey guys, this is a deadline day. We have to get all this stuff adjudicated today.
Yeah.
We're going to have to set down the rules." Oh, okay, we understand. And everyone says yes, yes, yes on their votes. This is unreal. The amount of pressure that they are feeling to push this through against the will of the people makes me wonder what's going on in the background.
I think we know what's going on in the background. It's that pathways plan. And, it said in the pathways plan that the thing that they don't have is the database getting hooked together. And that's why they're so, but like I said, we didn't find this fast enough to be able to stop all the workforce bills.
Yeah.
So all of the workforce bills that are part of the pathways plan have already gone through.
Correct.
Because, but people need to know I'm not going to say all of them because we all know Gabe Woolley. Oh my gosh, Jim Shaw, Molly Jenkins, Kendall Sackler, Tom Gann.
He's
Rick
so
West.
awesome right now. I love him.
I know. So we have some really good ones out there, and I don't want to throw those good ones under the bus, but unfortunately, the bigger mass of them right now are all globalists, and they know that they're, and I couldn't find the data stream, but it's the data education quality, the DEQ, which is what we worked on for years. They've been around. They started under Obama with the 4 pillars that he used to change the education system in America. They started then the quality education data. Group. And there was a huge QED grant out there. And so what they're doing is if they subscribe to this pathways plan and they follow it through, then Jebby's little minions help them find all of the money through all of these grants so that they can implement and institute this stuff. And it's the craziest thing to me.
Great point.
And tell me if you don't think that this is fairly accurate, that so many of these people feel like they're up there to do something. They have to do something, right?
Right.
I mean, and it's like, well, your job is to protect my liberty, not to do something. So they feel like the more grants they get, the more programs they put in place, they're doing something. Yes.
Correct.
Look what I got done for you. I'm your elected official. And I created 6 new boards and I got 27 new things done. And, and it's like, no, that's not what we want. We need to go backwards.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
So that's what they're doing. It's all under the guise of, well, I'm here to work for you and government's here to work for you. We're here to help you.
Well, and I think too, I listen to James Lindsay all the time. So I think how, he's kind of trained you how to think is, and I mean with this, no disrespect in this term, but they're useful idiots. That's what they are. They don't realize, I don't think that many of them are globalists. I think they're just being used. They're the useful idiots doing the work for the global leaders that, like Jeb Bush knows what he's doing, but the ones below don't. They're just doing, they trick them into thinking it's for this, or this, and they are literally the useful idiots, which unfortunately there's too many of them, and there's not enough that are like Gabe Woolley or Tom Gann that are saying, wait, time out, this is not right. And I know it's not right. And they have the discernment to make that decision immediately on the spot and listen. When we share stuff with them, they listen. They go, okay, well, tell me more about that. And then they do their own homework and then they're ready to go. But some of them are just like, go away. You can
definitely tell which ones do their homework and which ones don't.
Right.
On things. I mean,
Well, they consider, so many of them consider the lobbyists coming to them and saying, well, here's what this bill is about. Let me just tell you, blah, 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 blah. There you go. And they go,
Right.
okay, thanks for letting me know. I know what the bill
Yeah.
is about now.
And then they go say, well, I'm going to go ask the author of the bill about it, and then that's going to help me make my decision. Like you had said that with your guy, and I hear that too. And it's like, no, that's the last person you go talk to. Go do your own work.
Correct.
They don't, or use people like us who do research and understand things. So they can't read every bill, and I understand that it's not humanly possible. But they need to have groups of people that they trust, that understand certain subjects, that they can go to and say, hey, I don't have time to read this bill through. Can you please go through it and then kind of give me your Cliff Notes version of the concerns? And Gabe does that with us all the time. And I appreciate that he wants the people to help him and give their expertise or a second opinion. Or, I mean, sometimes he'll just send me a quick, like, what are you seeing here? I'm missing something. Or is this a concern? It's coming up quick, like, what's your thoughts? And that's what they should all be doing.
Yeah.
Put their ego aside, but that's not what they're doing.
No, Janice, you make such a great point, because when you think about transparency versus the dismissiveness that we see,
Right.
And I'll be frank, and I put it in every article. If I reached out to somebody and you didn't come back and give me a comment, I'm going to tell the public that you did.
Yeah.
And both of the primary authors of Senate Bill 224, I reached out and I asked them some really pointed questions. And I said things like, in your campaign, you said you were going to protect individual liberties. Do you understand why the people might be upset about that? If the people's voices are so loud in your constituency that they don't want it, what does that mean to you? They never answer. So they can't with these
because
things.
they can't tell me that they've had one parent call and say, please get this bill passed. I can't wait for you to share my kids' data with all these other government agencies and vendors. They've gotten not one. That alone should be the reason that they don't push this bill through. And what Hilbert did by asking for a third vote was completely wrong. And he just showed that he's an inept leader for doing that, in my opinion.
Correct.
Well, that bill is completely tainted at this point.
It's tainted.
Yeah, that's a perfect word. And when we think about what happened yesterday, like I don't know how much we've talked about this, but the just replacing a bill and what you talked about this morning about what they had to do and how subversive they had to be to brush that away and fool their fellow chamber members about what they were doing and stuff in language into a bill that's completely unrelated to the original content. I just want to say briefly, the language in that new bill that came out yesterday that essentially took over control of the State Board of Education from the only elected person, the language was a combination of two different bills. One of them was House Bill 1054 that was introduced by Democrat Rosencrantz from Norman. Okay. So one of the most liberal members of our legislature. And then the other one was 1491, which had a host of people, a lot of the former teachers, John Starr.
And that one is still not dead. So that one is one we got to watch.
And can that one then be that's the next false vehicle, Trojan horse that will push through?
Correct.
But if you look at it, there's no greater proof that the Oklahoma legislature is just a uniparty fest than seeing where those two bills came from, how they were stuffed together. Don't tell me they wrote the new version within 10 minutes of this statement coming out and them going to suspend the rules. They've had this sitting here as it had to have been legislative extortion to keep the SDE under control. We do not need to govern that way.
Right.
Well, and
Well, at
not
that
even
point,
we
you're
don't
just
need to.
using-
We just shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. At this point, though, you're negating the vote of the people of Oklahoma.
Bingo.
When you do something like that, the way that was put, you're basically saying, we don't care about your
Suck
vote.
it,
We
Oklahoma.
know what you're talking about. Yeah. We know better than you,
Correct.
That's my favorite Janice phrase. I use it all the time now. Suck it.
Suck it, losers. Not now, Gary.
Okay,
That's
probably be
inside
able to
joke.
wind it out because I know you've got to
Yes.
go out of town and it's Mother's Day
Yes.
weekend. And so I'm going to try to get us off here quickly. But, well, and this is the bottom line.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the bottom line. So please, we got a huge audience again today for this. People are really concerned. I mean, we had thousands of views on that other video. So if you don't think, and I'm talking to all you Jeb Bush acolytes who aren't going to read and think for themselves, if you really honestly think that people in Oklahoma aren't about this and they're not concerned about this, then I think you ought to look at the views on these videos, because that's not what it looks like to me. So this needs to be really, really thought about. Well, just quickly, will anybody do anything about the breaking of the rules to push SB 224 through? And then if you were on this morning and saw former Representative Jason Murphy talk about that specific thing, unfortunately, there's not anybody but us to do something about that. And the only way for us to do something about it is what, Mary?
The only way for us to do something about it?
Yeah.
Tell me
Remember,
what-
Jason said is for us to vote him out.
That's right.
Oh, amen. Yes.
That's
And
right.
it's funny because on that podcast you were talking about that got so many hits, you were identifying potential candidates within your listenership. I mean, these are people who know what's going on. They're
Yes.
entirely engaged and they're enraged. And that's exactly who we want in there. So Murphy,
And I'll just send a reminder that McCourtney got kicked out. So the legislators who don't think that we can kick out the rhinos, he's proof that we can, among others. But
Kevin
was a
Wallace
big
was
one.
another one.
Kevin Wallace, yep.
Yep.
So we're done. So start voting and doing the right thing, voting the right way, or we will replace you. And we have no qualms in doing it.
If you're
Well, and I
interested in
think that-
running for office, there's plenty of people out there to help support you and help you get
Yeah,
information.
right.
And
We
we
don't-
are going to have a full special on that, on running
Good.
for office on the 11th of next month. Jason
Great.
Murphy's coming back. We're going to have a couple other people who have run for office to talk about how to do that. So
Good.
that is definitely something that we're going to tackle on this show to make sure that we do that. So, and I kind of agree with Julia. This is how they all work. They have,
Yeah.
I mean, is McCourtney up there right now? Is he lobbying? Yes.
Well, we know
Is
Rhonda
Kevin
Baker
Wallace?
is.
Yes,
Yeah.
Rhonda Baker is. Yeah. So all of these, this is
Yeah.
where we get the revolving door that's got to stop. We need to get
Right.
these people out of there and moved on
And stay
into
out.
the private sector.
And just FYI, Brian Hill has been working against Oklahomans since at least 2023 when he started running his first workforce bill. And as of right now, I'm at 6 bills. There's probably more, but just what I could get my hands on quickly.
wow.
So watch for him, whether he runs for re-election or he runs for another office.
And don't forget, everybody on that Governor's Council on Workforce and Economic Development, that is a huge list of people on here. That's the number of people on that commission. And there are only 2 elected people on there, Brian Hill
and
and
Tedford, Mark Tedford.
Mark Tedford.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Oh, Kevin McDougal was on there for a minute, and then Kristen Thompson. But I think those have been, I think they've fallen off because I think they're only 2 at a time. But still in all, no representation. All right, ladies, I'm going to wish you all a wonderful Mother's Day, because I know we're all mothers, and
Yeah.
I wish us all a wonderful Mother's Day. And thank you so much for being with us to talk about this today. Again, huge bunch of people on here. People are very concerned. If you don't forget, yes, yesterday was the deadline for hearing bills, but that doesn't mean diddly squat. They have to do the budget and pass budget bills, and that doesn't mean something else can't come up. Do not lose focus. We just have until the 24th?
And Senate Bill 224 can still be voted on this next week. So that's not dead yet. Email, call, text your senators and tell them no on SB 224. We need 25 to kill it.
Okay. All right. You heard everybody. That's your job. And to educate those around you
Yes.
about what's going on in the state of Oklahoma. We're not red, haven't been red. Mary Fallon didn't help us. Governor Stitt isn't helping us. We've got to help ourselves. So have a great weekend, and we will see you again soon. Thanks so much
Bye,
for
all.
watching. Bye.
Bye.